You didn't choose the silence to punish him. You chose it to protect your peace. Because deep down, you felt it. That no matter how many words you spoke, no matter how much you explained, waited, or hoped, he couldn't hear you through the noise of his own denial. And so one day, you stopped. Not because you gave up on him, but because you finally said yes to you. You stopped reaching. You stopped explaining. You stopped trying to pull him into a truth he wasn't ready to see. And that silence, it began to echo, not in your mind, in his soul. He didn't notice it at first. He thought you were just giving space. He thought your energy would be there forever, lingering in the background like a safety net. But now, something feels different. He doesn't feel you the same. And what was once comfort is now confrontation. Your silence is not absence. It's a mirror, and it's showing him everything he ran from, including you. This is the final test, not for you, but for him. Can he hear the truth now without your voice trying to soften it? Can he face the consequences of a love he ignored now that it no longer waits at the door? Because your silence, it's not empty, it's holy, and it's calling him home, not through noise, but through vibration. He can't run forever. And now, the soul he tried to forget is the only one he feels in the quiet. You didn't disappear. You didn't shut down. You didn't suddenly stop loving him. But something inside you shifted. The version of you that kept giving, reaching, waiting. She's not in control anymore. And it wasn't out of anger. It wasn't out of revenge. It was born from clarity. Because there comes a moment in every divine feminine's path when she realizes that love can't be proven through effort. It can only be received through resonance. And in that realization, something sacred happens. She goes silent, but not the silence of defeat, not the silence of withdrawal. This is the silence of sacred self-recognition. The moment she chooses herself, not because she's letting go of him, but because she's finally holding on to her own soul. And from the outside, it might look like nothing changed, but in the energetic field between you, everything changed. Because up until now, your energy was always extending toward him. Your thoughts, your love, your spiritual support. Even in separation, your essence wrapped around him like a net. He didn't have to show up because you were always there, spiritually holding him, even when he didn't ask for it. But now, that cord isn't being pulled anymore. Not because you severed it, but because you stopped feeding it from a place of imbalance. and the masculine feels that. He may not say it, he may not even understand it fully, but something is off. The warmth he used to feel from your direction, even in silence, feels colder now. The energy he could tap into when he felt lost, it's not as accessible. It's like walking into a room that always smelled like you, and suddenly, the scent is gone. That emptiness, that's not punishment. It's the mirror, and that mirror is showing him what life feels like without your vibration holding space for his healing. Have you noticed how suddenly he pops into your dreams again? Or how your body randomly heats up, almost as if someone's thinking of you? That's the mirror working, because your silence doesn't create disconnection, it activates awareness. It's in your stillness that he starts to feel the weight of what he lost. It's when you no longer carry his unspun emotions that he begins to feel the full gravity of them. It's when you stop explaining your worth that he finally has the space to question his absence. This is the sacred reversal. For so long you tried to make him see, but he was looking through filters of fear, ego, and survival. And now, in your absence, he sees the outline of you in everything. Because absence has a shape, and your shape was never small. Your silence became the canvas where his soul starts to paint the truth. Not the fantasy, not the illusion, not the projected version of you that he created to stay safe, but the real you, the soul that stood beside him even when he pushed it away. And now that you've stepped back, he can no longer deny your presence, because it echoes in the places he tried to numb. It rises in the moments he least expects. It shows up in the people he tries to distract himself with, but can't truly feel. Because you are the mirror, and you are no longer speaking in words. You're speaking in absence, in vibration, in silence that roars louder than noise. And here's the deepest truth. This mirror was always coming. The question was never if he would feel it, but whether you would be strong enough to hold your silence long enough for him to awaken to it. And now he is, not all at once, not with clarity, but with discomfort. And that discomfort is divine. It's the sign that your silence is doing what your voice never could, shaking him awake. Because he's not running from you, he's running from himself. And in the silence, that's exactly who he meets. Something shifted. He can't explain it, but he knows it. That quiet, familiar hum of your energy that used to surround him like an invisible comfort. It's different now. Before, it was always there, soft but persistent, like a sacred rhythm pulsing in the background of his life. It followed him when he was driving, when he was lying in bed at night, when he was with other people, but not really with them. Your energy was like a blanket, warm, present, forgiving. It made it easy for him to ignore the space between you, because on a soul level, he was still connected to your frequency. He didn't need to speak. He didn't need to show up. He felt you, and that was enough to keep him from facing what he truly feared. But now that's gone. It's not that your connection disappeared. It's that your frequency evolved, and he can't reach it the same way anymore. He tries. He tries to tap in like he used to. He closes his eyes and thinks of you. He pulls up your photo. He scrolls through messages he never responded to. But what once brought him peace now brings him discomfort. He doesn't feel you like before. He feels the space instead. And in that space, he meets his own emptiness. He starts to notice how hollow some of his decisions have been, how numb he feels in conversations that used to distract him, how your absence isn't just the lack of communication, it's a lack of light. Because whether he acknowledged it or not, your energy held him. It whispered, "I see you," even when he couldn't face himself. It gave him permission to delay, to postpone, to avoid. But now, that permission is gone. And without it, his reality feels unfamiliar. The joy doesn't hit the same. The validation from others feels shallow. Even his routines, the ones that used to anchor him, feel pointless. And here's the part he's not saying out loud, maybe not even to himself. He misses the way your energy made him feel alive. Not because you fed his ego, but because your soul reminded his of what he was meant to become. Your love wasn't just emotional, it was energetic. It was healing. It was a frequency he couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore either. And now that you've reclaimed your energy, he feels the absence like a body aches for oxygen. He may try to replace it with distractions, with other people, with busyness, but nothing fits the same, because nothing is you. And here's the truth that's haunting him. He never imagined you would stop reaching. He never imagined you would choose stillness over connection. He never imagined that your silence would feel louder than your love once did. But that's what happens in this stage of the journey. The divine feminine rises, not through noise, but through resonance. And when she shifts her energy back to herself, it creates a vacuum in the field. A space where all the avoidance, all the running, all the numbing comes crashing down. Because without her holding the frequency, he has no more cover. And that's when the awakening begins. Not in romance, not in words, but in raw inner confrontation. Because the energy that used to soothe him now unsettles him. The light that used to comfort him now exposes him. The love that used to follow him now waits for him to rise. And he doesn't feel her energy the same way anymore, because she's no longer standing in the same place. She's not reaching out. She's not anchoring his healing. She's not filling the gap between who he is and who he's afraid to become. Now she's facing forward, toward her purpose, toward her wholeness, toward her truth. And the only way he'll feel her again is if he rises to meet her. He can't run from it anymore. For a long time, her silence brought him comfort. When she stopped reaching out, he convinced himself she was done, that maybe she had given up, moved on, or simply lost interest. And oddly, that gave him peace. Peace to avoid, to distract, to pretend he was unaffected. But now, that silence feels different. It's not soft, it's not distant, it's loud. It's the kind of silence that shakes something loose in his chest, not because she's punishing him, but because her energy has shifted. Before, he could still feel her. Even in the silence, she was present. In the background of his thoughts, in the corners of his dreams, in the moments when everything else faded, she was still there. But now, she's not. And that absence, it's not just space. It's a mirror that's beginning to crack the shell he built around his emotions. He finds himself waking up at odd hours, heart pounding for no reason. He hears songs that bring her name into his mind without warning. He sees her in people, places, words, but the difference is he no longer feels held. And that's when his soul begins to tremble. Not in fear of losing her, but in fear of facing himself. Because now, without her energy subtly anchoring him, he's exposed to the rawness of his own avoidance. The distractions feel dull, the connections feel hollow, and his own reflection, the one he's avoided, stares back at him with piercing clarity. Have you ever felt someone disappear, but not physically? That moment when you know they've pulled their energy inward and the world just feels heavier without them. That's what he's feeling now. It's not about her absence in the physical world. It's the absence of being seen by her soul. And that loss is shaking him awake. He's beginning to remember how much her love held. Not just emotion, but truth. Not just attention, but recognition. She was the one who saw the version of him he couldn't see for himself. And now that vision is gone. Or at least, it's no longer available to him until he becomes the man worthy of it. That realization isn't gentle. It's disorienting because for the first time, there's no emotional safety net, no silent spiritual reassurance, no invisible, "I'll be here if you come back." Her silence isn't waiting, it's choosing, and he feels it. Have you ever reached a point where you stopped chasing someone, and without warning, they started feeling everything you used to carry? That's where he is. And this is the sacred unraveling. His soul is starting to tremble, not because she's gone, but because he can no longer access her through the old version of himself. Now, something deeper is being asked of him. To rise, to remember, to return, not for comfort, but in alignment. And until he does, the silence will keep echoing, not to punish him, but to awaken him. Because only in her absence can he finally feel the weight of everything he ignored. And that weight, it's sacred, it's divine, it's his soul waking up. What her stillness is actually teaching him. At first, he thought it was just a phase. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she'd reach out again, like she always did. But this time, something is different. She's not pulling back as a tactic. She's not going quiet to get a reaction. She's simply still, rooted, present, clear. And that stillness, it's not weakness, it's mastery. It's the divine feminine in her fullest expression, not trying to fix him, heal him, or make him understand, but simply standing in the truth of who she is. And slowly, something begins to unravel within him, because for so long, she filled in the gaps. When he withdrew, she reached. When he doubted, she reassured. When he collapsed inward, she held the energetic space. Even in separation, she made herself emotionally available. Always giving, always anchoring, but now, her stillness is teaching him something no words ever could. She's not here to carry what he won't claim. She's no longer participating in the imbalance. She's no longer orbiting his healing. And that shift, quiet, subtle, but seismic, forces him to confront everything he's avoided. Have you ever noticed how silence can say more than words? How someone's peace can reflect everything that's unsettled in you? That's what he's facing now, because her stillness isn't just the absence of action. It's the presence of alignment. And that alignment, it exposes him. It shows him how often he relied on her emotional labor. It reveals how much he took her energy for granted. It reflects how deeply he feared his own vulnerability, and how often he expected her to make him feel safe, without doing the inner work himself. Now, her stillness becomes a teacher. It says, "I will not beg you to see me. I will not bleed to make you feel whole. I will not wait in the shadows while you avoid your own light." And beneath the layers of ego, resistance, and confusion, he hears it. He may not understand it all at once. He may resist. He may lash out internally, blaming her for the discomfort rising in him, but somewhere deep in his soul, he knows this silence is sacred. It's not abandonment, it's initiation. Her stillness is not rejection, it's redirection. It's a portal, one that invites him to rise into a version of himself that's capable of meeting her on equal ground. Can you remember a time when your own stillness changed the dynamic, not through force, but through clarity? That's what this is. She is no longer reacting. She's reflecting. And in that reflection, he sees his own immaturity, his fear, his avoidance. And yet, strangely, he also sees his potential. Because her stillness isn't cold. It's warm, it's open, but firm. It doesn't close the door. It simply makes clear, if you want to step in, come as your whole self. This is where the masculine begins to understand the difference between control and presence, between chasing and choosing. Because in her stillness, he no longer feels her trying to pull him in. And that's when his own soul starts to ask, what if I moved toward her, not because she asked, but because I choose to? That's the awakening, not forced, not manipulated, but born in the quiet space she created when she finally stopped trying to convince him. Now the only thing left is for him to decide. Will he stay in avoidance, or will he step into the frequency that her silence has been teaching all along? Because one thing is clear, she's not waiting, she's embodying, and if he wants to meet her, he'll have to rise. This is the moment Spirit always spoke of, the one no one wants to face, the one that separates longing from readiness and fantasy from truth. Because this is the final test of the divine masculine. Can he awaken without her voice guiding him through it? For so long, she was the compass, not through demands or control, but through love so honest it pierced through his defenses. Even when he couldn't show up, she did. Even when he couldn't love her fully, she held the flame. She was the frequency that made him feel seen, even when he couldn't see himself. But now, the frequency has shifted. She's no longer calling him forward. She's not giving signs, sending love, holding space. She's silent, not out of punishment, but from a place of peace. And that peace is deafening because it leaves him alone with everything he ran from: his fear, his wounds, his shadow, and most of all, his truth. Can he face it without her explaining what's happening? Can he hold himself through the storm she once helped him weather? This is what the test asks, not because she stopped loving him, but because she started loving herself more. And this, ironically, is the greatest opportunity he's ever had. Because now there are no emotional crutches, no energetic lifelines, no constant reassurance from the feminine that we're still connected. Now it's just him and the space her silence created. Can you imagine what it feels like to suddenly lose access to the soul that once made everything feel safe? That's where he is. He starts questioning everything. Why do I feel so unsettled? Why does her silence feel louder than her presence ever did? Why can't I shake this feeling that I missed something sacred? It's not just that she's not speaking, it's that the silence is reflecting, and in that reflection, he sees the parts of himself that were too immature, too afraid, too closed off to meet her love fully. Now, for the first time, he realizes something vital. She was never the one who found this connection hard. He was. It was his avoidance, his inconsistency, his fear of surrender. It was the way he compartmentalized the sacred while chasing the familiar. And now the familiar is crumbling because the old distractions don't soothe him. The ego doesn't protect him. Even the stories he told himself, that she was too much, too emotional, too intense, they fall apart in the face of her stillness. He's being asked to awaken, but not through her guidance, through his own soul. Because this love was never meant to be chased, it was meant to be claimed. And that claiming doesn't come from waiting for her to reach back. It comes from rising into presence, into wholeness, into the truth he's always known deep down. He must remember her voice, not because it's still speaking to him, but because it became part of him when she finally went silent. Her silence isn't a void, it's a transmission. It says, you'll either rise or you'll lose me in the noise you created to avoid yourself. This is the final test, and she can't take it for him. She won't. She already passed hers when she stopped needing to be the one who always held the flame. Now, he has to become the flame. And the question remains, will he hear what her silence has been shouting all along? Or will he only understand when the mirror finally disappears? He tells himself she left, that she walked away, that she gave up on him. But that's not the truth. And deep down, in the quietest corner of his soul, he knows it. Because if he's honest, she didn't slam doors, she didn't scream, she didn't beg for closure or make him the villain. She simply stopped showing up for a version of love that kept breaking her spirit. And that wasn't abandonment. That was self-honoring. There's a sacred difference between leaving someone and choosing yourself. And what she did was an act of inner revolution. She chose to stop waiting for a version of him that refused to rise. She chose to stop bleeding for a connection that wouldn't stop wounding her. She chose to stop anchoring a love that required her to abandon herself. And in that choice, she didn't become colder. She became clearer. Do you know what that kind of clarity does? It changes the field. It shifts timelines. It calls in new frequencies, new power, new truth. It calls in a version of her that no longer needs to suffer to prove her loyalty. And it calls in a version of him that either rises in integrity or fades into a past timeline that can no longer hold her light. The divine feminine didn't disappear. She simply stopped living in the shadows of potential. She stopped holding space for someone who wasn't showing up in the physical. She didn't abandon him. She released the illusion. She let go of the storyline where love meant saving someone who wasn't ready to be saved. And now, her silence speaks for her. It says, I remember what I'm worth now. I honor the love we shared, but I won't hold myself hostage to it. I still feel the connection, but I won't live in a waiting room. And that vibration, it's loud, it's potent, it's real. It doesn't beg to be heard because it echoes through the spiritual field like a beacon of truth. He may still be telling himself stories that she moved on too quickly, that she stopped caring, that she changed, but what really happened is this. She awakened. And once a woman awakens to her sacred worth, to the fullness of her frequency, she can never again fit into the small container of the relationship that required her to shrink. And now, he stands alone. Not because she left, but because he didn't rise. This is the reality of the final phase. It's not about blame. It's not about who reached out last or who said the wrong thing. It's about resonance. She became a frequency he can only meet by stepping fully into his divine self. Not just in theory, not just in soul talk, but in embodied truth. That's what the universe is asking of him now. No more hiding, no more ghosting, no more waiting for her to reach back first. If he wants her, he must become someone who matches the love he once avoided. And if he doesn't, she'll be okay, because this time her happiness doesn't depend on him choosing her. It depends on her choosing herself again and again and again. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you had to let them go because holding on meant losing yourself? That's what she did. Not because she stopped believing in love, but because she started believing in a love that doesn't require self-betrayal to survive. And that's the deepest message of all. She didn't abandon him. She remembered who she is. And that remembrance became her freedom. And maybe, just maybe, it's the only thing strong enough to finally awaken him.